Alright, what up? So today's video we'll be talking about coping mechanisms. So coping mechanisms is a form of a desire. So instead of us dealing with these coping mechanisms, not knowing what to do, not knowing how to go about it, I'm gonna give y'all some tools you can use to help you overcome your coping mechanism. So you don't gotta keep dealing with it. See, that's a duality right there, overcoming versus dealing. So first and foremost, we want to look at our coping mechanisms that we don't like as a form of a desire, but not just any desire. We want to look at it as a negative desire, all right? So, because it's a negative desire, that means that we want to have either a positive reinforcement or a negative reinforcement so we can get rid of that negative desire, all right? So, when we're looking at our coping mechanisms, it's a word we like to use called aversive stimuli or aversive psyche to label our coping mechanism. So aversive stimuli will be anything that's external. Aversive psyche will be things that are internal, psychologically speaking, right? So let's just say that aversive stimuli will be everything from people, places, and things. We can say that aversive psyche will be everything from the thoughts, words, actions, and ideas. Alright, so let's go ahead and get into it. I want you to think of a coping mechanism that you got. A person, place, a thing, or thoughts, words, actions, ideas that you use as a coping mechanism that you think is a negative that you want to overcome, that you don't want to keep dealing with, you want to overcome it, all right? So, we're going to use that for the framework. So, this is what we're going to do. So, we got positive reinforcement versus negative reinforcement. So, we're gonna tap into our negative reinforcement, all right? So, negative, we're talking about shame and avoidance. So, desire being an emotion of a coping mechanism, right? Low vibrational state at that. We want to also look at shame and avoidance as another low vibrational state. But we're going to use these negative reinforcements to overcome desire. So we're going to take ourselves even lower in vibration so that we can detach. Because at the end goal is detachment from the coping mechanism. And then we're going to get into positive reinforcement of peace and detachment, all right? Which is peaceful detachment, which is actually a high vibrational state. But at the end of the day, it's going to all lead to detachment. So let's say that we're dealing with something that we're coping with, right? So we want to tell ourselves that thing that we're coping with brings us shame, all right? It's bringing us shame, low worth. We don't like the low worth. We don't like this low vibrational shit that we're doing. So we're gonna avoid it, right? Avoidance. That is also tied in with fear. So we can look at avoidance from a point of fear, or we can look at avoidance from a point of shame, all right? That means that we are detaching from it negatively, all right? We call that negative detachment. So let's look at it. So you want to be real creative. You want to use your imagination, creativity, and belief on this one. This is the basis of spirituality, all right? So spirituality being the super science, being super intelligence, we want to use our imagination, creativity, and belief to overcome our coping mechanism. So let's say, think of that coping mechanism now. How can we overcome, how can we avoid dealing with that? Let's use an example. Let's just go ahead and use an example. A form of desire. We can say anything like alcohol, lust. We can say lust, right? You know what I'm saying? That's a form of a desire. All right, that's too deep because a lot of women don't have the same lust problems that men have. So let's try something different. Let's just say cigarettes, for example. So cigarettes, all right? So let's say we want to overcome the coping mechanism of cigarettes or alcohol, video games, it don't matter. So we want to avoid that thing that that causes us to cope. So how we avoid it is we're going to take it away. We're going to take it all the way away. Anything that's causing us lust, we're not going around no women that's going to bring us lust. Cigarettes, we're not going to buy no cigarettes at all. Alcohol, we're not buying no alcohol. We're going to make sure that we ride it out to the liquor store closed. You know what I'm saying? So we ain't going to do nothing. We're not going to get it at all. We're going to avoid it. We have a fear of it. We have a shame. We thinking it's going to bring us low worth. And we also avoid it from a point of fear, knowing that we are afraid of it. We fearing God's truth. The truth is that we are overcoming it. We're not dealing with it no more. You know what I'm saying? So we are avoiding it at all costs. That's from a stimuli point of view. Now let's say from a psyche point of view, thoughts, words, actions, and ideas. You got specific thought processing that you go to cope with your reality, right? So we want to start telling ourselves that every time we think this certain way, that we want to avoid these thoughts. Every time I think about this, I want to have happy thoughts. All right, so we can say the thought of lust, right? You know what I'm saying? So, all right, so this is something that I used to do. I'm gonna get real transparent with y'all. This is something that I used to do when I used to have lust problems. I used to sing this song from this movie Sister Act. That song Oh Happy Days. So I sing it in my head, oh happy days, you know what I'm saying? When Jesus walks. So anytime I had a lustful thought, I just start singing that song in my head, you know what I'm saying? So you can actually, so look, now we're avoiding one thing by replacing it with another thing, right? So that it's not there anymore. We're overcoming it instead of dealing with it and just letting it ride out because it's dwelling. So that's how we're overcoming that thought. So certain words, right? Let's just say you got a problem cussing, right? So shame and avoidance, all right? So negative reinforcement. So what would be the negative reinforcement? So we're going to put a rubber band on our hand. Every time we say a cuss word, we're going to pop ourselves with this rubber band on our wrist. Pow, hard. It's bringing us shame and low worth. So in order for us to avoid popping ourselves with that rubber band, we're going to detach. We're going to overcome cussing. So we're not going to cuss because every time we wind up cussing, we wind up having to pop ourselves real hard with this rubber band. So that's how we avoid cussing, because eventually, every time you think of a cuss word, you're going to think of what happened with your hand. That's if you have discipline. And that takes discipline right there. All of this takes discipline. To overcome coping mechanisms, I'm going to put that right here in the middle. Discipline. Discipline. You know what I'm saying? Now, when you incorporate your discipline, you are now becoming a disciple of the truth, a disciple of the Christ, a disciple of God. God is the truth, you know what I'm saying? And the truth is, you got to have discipline to do anything in life, you know what I'm saying? I don't care what you think it is. If you want to wake up out the bed, you got to have discipline to get up. You want to go eat some food, you got to have discipline that I'm going to eat when I'm hungry. It might seem easy, but it's still discipline. All right, so that is how you use the negative reinforcement to overcome the negative desire. So now let's look at positive reinforcements, for example. Let's look at the same thing. So let's say we got an overeating problem. We like to overeat. So positive reinforcements will be, instead of making a whole plate of food, I'm gonna make the smallest portion. I'm gonna make a small portion to make sure that it's not even a possible way of me to overeat that food. All right. So now